Hi guys, welcome to Command King's channel, and today we're gonna talk about, is it really hard to master web programming? And I'm gonna talk about this as a beginner myself. Well, I've started web programming for about a week ago, and the particular backend stuff I'm using now is Node.js for the server-side scripting using JavaScript and the Express framework. Well, I must say that I had some experience in JavaScript, not really in creating some front-end things like like some user scripts or something. No, I had an experience of creating a chessboard when in my yeah, early chess programming years like that, and all the things it could have actually done was simply to move the pieces around the board, and I also even did some functions that would verify whether the move is actually legal or not. So, well, just some programming experience. Basically, the very first language I've ever learned. Well, like it was such a long time ago that in some cases I think that my very first language was actually C, because that was like in C I written my first really complicated chess programs, and that was kind of real programming. But that early JavaScript days were probably not considered by me like as a as an experience even like this. Yeah. So I did have some experience, and just before discussing this web programming mastering difficulties, I'd like to say that JavaScript is quite a unique language, and there are probably the reasons for why is this really getting so popular nowadays is probably that it actually accumulates within itself two very interesting features, and I'll name this just in a moment, but and these features it's really amazing how can they be in one language, and these features, okay, just to the point. So, well, there is an object-oriented programming as well as a procedural one, and it's not really easy, well, at least for me, to say whether the JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language or procedural one. Well, it doesn't really have classes in the perspective like, say, Java has them, or C++ or C Sharp, so doesn't, well, maybe the latest versions, but, well, at least when I was learning this, there wasn't much things like that. Well, sorry if somebody disagrees. Well, just try to get what am I talking about, basically, before hating me for these words. And what it does really have and provide is actually creating objects. And so I'm shaking my hands, and the table is a bit shaking. Yes, it's a bit too many emotions basically to describe this. Okay, and actually, the interesting thing that while the object itself is being like the instance of the particular class, then you might have assumed that there has to be a class in order to create an object, but not really like so in JavaScript. So in JavaScript you can just say var a equals new object, and this is it, and then you can say a dot name is equal to John, a dot age is equal to 20, etc., and you basically can assign any types to this object's inner variables. If this was a class, that probably it would be like inner fields of the class or something like that. But so JavaScript is extremely handy in this perspective, and well, probably the most ever exciting application of JavaScript itself is actually backend scripting. And as far as I've discovered this for myself recently while learning Node.js server-side scripting and JavaScript, I was really surprised how brilliantly that code looks like, and I fell in love with it just as far as I've seen it actually, and that's really amazing. All this like when you pass in something to the function as an argument, and here you can define a function, and not only in the classical syntax when you have to use the function keyword and then the function name, but more in the lambda function styles. Well, you just put the parenthesis and then the so-called arrow function when you type an equals symbol and then the greater than sign, and then the curly braces would have the actual function, the body of the actual function within themselves. So it's really quite exciting. And another reason and another thing to mention here is actually some backgrounds I have come from to web programming. And also I'd like to mention the reason for why did I actually start doing web programming. So let's just put all of these things in order, and now I'll try to describe each of them separately. So, well, the first ever thing to consider that when I just started programming, I wasn't really thinking about to make it my full stack job. This was until the moment when I got my first job offer. When I can opening up my email and see some job proposal there, and I was really surprised. And actually, that's the reason for me to start learning web development really heavily. And I also watched many videos and that really tried to bring some message that could have been described as start very general, but try to get more specific. So, well, that means that if you have lots of general skills, well, that's basically pretty cool. But you're not really gonna get much paid for this. While if you have some specific skills, especially if people really need those skills and they're really ready to buy them, well, in that case, you're just gonna make money for your job, and you really can switch from the job you've been doing before, like I'm doing. Well, I'm 30, and I didn't really think that I would ever quit my job that I was actually doing all of my life, basically. And now just starting to be a web developer from scratch with absolutely no degree and no working experience, but quite a fun. I'm working as a web developer at this particular moment. So guys, you can do the same also. That's one of my messages to you here. Okay, so now let's talk about actually the topic of this video. So, is the mastering of web programming is really that difficult? If I'll try to describe my feelings about this, then it looks like, and if you just compare some programming languages and technologies with some sort of transport, yeah, so this would be a picture like, well, when you code in brain fog, my favorite programming language ever, only commands, well, it looks like you're driving the skateboard. Well, if you then will sit on assembly, well, it feels like you're having a bicycle. Also, you already have much more options compared to the skateboard. It's faster, it's more comfortable, and so on. And you can actually go for some distance, apparently bigger than you would go on skateboard. And then goes C programming language. Well, C already looks like, like a monster truck. So it's really like a globetrotter. It's for really big journeys like that. So it has great wheels. It's really big. It can carry tons of stuff inside it. So, well, monster truck or a globetrotter, well, that's pretty solid. Yeah, so that's for C programming language. Well, and if you actually try to take things like Node.js, especially powered by Express framework, well, it feels like you are in a space on a starship, like in Star Wars, like flying among the stars using the warp engine, like that. And this is just amazingly fantastic. And when I first started to look at the code written in JavaScript as a server-side scripting involving some Node.js pre-built kind of pre-built files generated with the Express generator, a standard template generator, which goes with the Express framework basically. I've rejected this myself recently, by the way, for it doesn't really give that much of understanding of what you are actually doing. Well, it's better to start doing things by hand, by the way. Okay, so well, that was such a feeling, like, you know, like you're in a science fiction movie. It's like all these lads on the panels are just make your eyes crazy about them, and you have no idea what is this button doing and what is this little average used for. So it's like that, like you're on the spaceship and you have no idea how to control it in order to not really to get to some destination, but you can sit and say just, oh wow, oh, this is amazing, like this. Well, but after just for about a couple of days, I realized that it has a very structured inner, like, kind of nature of code, and actually it's really easy to understand. And here another kind of question arises. So the difficulty of mastering web programming starts depending on the backgrounds you have come from. So if you have no experience in programming at all, especially in low-level languages, well, it probably you would have to, if you're really do learn web programming from scratch, this is probably gonna be really hard. And I think that 100% that if you will actually master it, you won't really understand the low-level things, like most web developers basically doesn't, if they are only specified in some high-level technologies, like, you know, like all these frameworks, etc. Well, but in case if you have come from the very lowest level of programming, like well, in this case you can see all the beauty and all the fantastic work that was brought to you by the developers, by the open source developers, by the way, man. It's just not that, it's really cool. Yeah, open source developers did this, and now we can use it. This is just a fantastic. So I want to make something same cool thing in my life, well, one day when I learn how to do this, basically. Okay, so when you come from the low-level programming background, you really can understand that it's amazingly huge and fantastic work has been done in order to give us as a web developers, or it's more like as users. Yeah, you feel yourself like a user, even though being coding, you feel like just like a user. Yeah, well, in this case, you can just absolutely you know, like have a lot of pleasure while writing this JavaScript server-side scripting, like I do now, actually. And this is really fantastic. And the trickiest thing for me, that this process goes extremely fast. So if your if your mind is set up to understand some basic concepts of programming, so you have all of that general understanding of how it works, well, in that case, mastering web programming, well, I don't know, it takes you really little time. Like, it took me basically 2 days to get how all the things are done in Node.js and Express framework, even in the case if you will connect some Mongo database. So I just pick up the first tutorial I found on the internet, I followed it, and I've actually completed this tutorial and understood quite pretty nicely of what was it all actually about. So after that, well, just a little kind of white spots left after I finished this, so I started to search for a bit deeper explanation of what's going on, and then I found another tutorial, and this time this was a video tutorial on YouTube, one really pretty decent one. And after following that one, I feel like, okay, so there were actually 2 states. The first state in my web development like education, yeah, the first state was like I looked at the code, I said, oh my god, what the hell is this? I can't understand what's going on in this code, what's going on here, just I don't know. And the second state, I'm writing this code. Yeah, I'm writing this server-side scripting. I'm building a web app. Well, currently I finished the video covering how to make a static web service. Yeah, I was learning web programming only for about 4 days for now. Yeah, and I've already made my own tutorial on how to make a static web service using Node.js and Express.js frameworks, and you can check them out on my channel, or I probably put the link to that one in the description, so you will be able to see the level of my particular understanding of this actual topic here at this particular time right now. Okay, so okay, let's just summarize things. So there might be just two cases apparently. The first case, if you have an experience in low-level programming, well, in this case it would be, I believe, extremely easy for you to learn web programming. Well, but in case you don't have any experience, that web programming would be probably a bit too complicated for. It would be just hard to understand the syntax of what you're seeing, and every single new kind of character would stop your consciousness flow, and you would be wondering what is this code, what this code is actually doing. Well, so like something like that. But if you just get the general structure of the code, it's probably gonna be pretty easy. And one last thing I'd like to mention in this particular video, for I believe it's really important, and in relation to the web programming as well. Well, you know, there are quite many basically programming languages used for backend server-side scripting, and also some frameworks that are available for us today. And you know, there is like Ruby on Rails, Python, Django, PHP also has some sort of framework for it. I don't remember how it's called, just don't really remember that. And you know, when for about a year ago I took a quick look at Ruby on Rails and Python Django, I said, oh, I won't ever be doing this. I hate this. I don't like it. You know, I thought that I don't like web programming in general, but now I can say that the reason was actually the language. Well, Ruby is just you have to have your mind set up to Ruby way. They call this Ruby way. That's just for those who like object-oriented stuff, and I just hate this. Well, I don't know. I think that's too complicated, and in Node.js you can do all the same things, but without all those complications, just much easier and with a greater performance either. Well, but some likes to write some very cool, brilliant code, like which looks like so beautiful and so on. Well, they feel some pleasure while doing this. Well, maybe they can do so. I don't know. Well, in case of Python, it was just like a bit too many things like were brought as a template, so you didn't have that much of freedom there. While Node.js allows you basically to configure every single thing yourself. Yeah, it brings you some extra job if you need to make something really complicated, but generally I really like some configurable systems much more compared to those that are actually just bringing some templates. So, well, it's basically the same difference like as if you take the Windows operating system and Linux. So in Windows everything is just kind of embedded into one core of Linux, or of Windows. Oh my god, I forgot that word. How is that called? The core of the operating system. Okay, sorry, I just forgot that word. Well, so in Windows you have that core part, actually like the one. Yeah, it's not separated, it's just the one, and that's the reason that the Windows has some APIs allowing the users to interact with them and call some system functions, and that's done like that. While on Linux you have many commands, little commands that you can execute in the bash shell and unite them into scripts, and it's like you have a lot of bricks, and you can build an entire house using those bricks, and you can have either little bricks or a bit like bigger bricks, so like, you know, one wall could be built with this sort of size of bricks, and another part of the house might have been built with a much more bigger bricks, and all this like sort of a constructor is really brilliant. So, well, in this case, to my personal like a feel of the Node.js and Express.js framework, it more looks like it's a Linux, yeah. While say Ruby on Rails mode looks like it's a Windows. Well, it's my personal opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what, but it's actually how I feel that. Okay, guys. So I hope it's a bit more clear now. Well, at least from the beginner's perspective, who is currently learning web development, is it really hard to master it or not? Or not? So I hope you have enjoyed this video and maybe find it useful. And if you really want to see more videos on this channel, please press the subscribe button, and don't forget to also click the bell button in order to receive the notifications. And I'll talk to you next time. Take care.